Parenting and adoption isn't about perfection. In this conversation with Melissa Corkum, we're going to talk about redefining success in parenting for your family. What's your connection to the foster care and adoption space?
Well, my connection, Trisha, started very early. I'm actually a Korean adoptee. So adoption has been a part of my story for almost my entire life. I was adopted as an infant to the United States. And obviously always knew I'm a transracial adoptee, so there wasn't really any hiding it. I have two siblings who also came to our family through adoption. And I also have a personality that kind of sees the bright side of everything. So it took a long time for me to understand kind of the impact of adoption and some of the harder grief parts. But when I got married, my husband wanted to adopt before we had even met. So that was an interesting part of our story. So we have 2 kids by birth and 4 through international adoption.
Wow. You're not kidding. You just live and breathe. And it's really, I always like to say it's in your DNA for sure at this point, that adoption. And so that's going to really speak volumes in our space. So how would you recommend that parents start to define, if they wake up in the morning, kind of what's the target? What's the intention? What have you come to find after years of now coaching parents, not just doing it yourself? What would you say the bar is for success now?
I always tell parents, when we work together, I always say we need a working definition of success. Like I need to know what parents' definition of success is so I can help them get there. And my number one rule is it has to be something that's within their control, which is tricky, right? And sometimes we do this exercise where we have divide a paper into 3 and we write down things we have control over, things we have influence over, and things that we don't have control over. And that kind of helps sift out some maybe ill-conceived notions we've had. Oh, we thought we controlled this thing. We really just have influence over it. Or maybe we don't have any control over it at all. And so that looks like, what are we as parents doing to care well for our nervous system? So the other piece that we talk about is this misnomer that our kids' needs have to come first. I think that is born sometimes of our faith backgrounds. Sometimes I think it's society. And I realized that I was living this life where I was spending a lot of energy. If you think of like a upside down triangle, like in 3 layers, the top layer, like all my energy was going to managing kids' behaviors. I felt like I was like playing whack-a-mole with behaviors. There was 6 kids, there were a lot of behaviors, or a lot of needs. And then it was like, okay, what are the needs? And there was a lot of energy to just meeting needs that maybe even weren't connected to behaviors. It was just like, feeding 6 kids 3 times a day and, running around to OT appointments and therapy appointments. And then at the very bottom, it was like my needs. And it was like, oh, I'll get back to the gym once we get this kid stable. I'll get back to this hobby that I remember doing, pre-kids when the kids are grown. Like there was this very much like, I'm on the back burner. I just need to, and especially when our older kids came home, it was like, we just need to do this until they're stable, right? Like we can put anything aside. And then like 6 months turned into a year turned into 2 years. Like, and it's just unsustainable, right? To put your own needs on the back burner for that long. And so now I talk to people about flipping their pyramid, right? So now the triangle's got the base on the ground instead of the point, but the layers are the same. So now you're the biggest layer at the bottom. Then you're proactively meeting your kids' needs. And then at the top is whatever behaviors kind of sift out at the top, and just giving parents permission to say, the number one thing that we can do for our families when we have big, challenging behaviors is take care of our own nervous systems, because we shouldn't underestimate the incredible power, the neurobiology of what it means to be okay in our own nervous system. And that means that we get to prioritize things like going to the gym and making our own doctor's appointments and going to our own therapy appointments, even when it feels like the squeakiest wheel, right, is to do all these other things. It feels very counterintuitive, but it's the only thing I found that quote unquote works, right? To changing the energy, the feel of like how successful you are.
All of that. Yep, absolutely. And some of us are slower learners than others. Some of us have to hit a brick wall before we start to learn to fill our own cup and to bring our calm, right? To the best thing we can do is to bring our calm whole selves to every parenting interaction. And, there was this ideal, right? You talked about you were naive, and there was this expectation of how you thought parenting would look and how you wanted it to be. What was the impetus? What caused you to move forward into this? Okay, now I'm going to actually do it. Not just think about it, not just, dream about going to the gym or getting back to that hobby. But what was the thing that kind of caused you to tip and to move forward with that journey?
I mean, really, it was survival. I mean, when I say that our house was chaos, like we were in such crisis. And so for us, it was there. We couldn't keep going the way that we were going. There had to be something different.
If there is a parent that they're listening to this, they're watching this, and they're thinking, I'm at that point, like this isn't working. I mean, they have just hit that brick wall of exhaustion. They take nap after nap and it's just not doing it. Nothing is fixing what's going on. What's an encouragement if you were sitting across from them having coffee today of kind of, what's that one little step that they could take that would be an encouragement for them today?
So I am such a huge fan of body work. I stumbled upon the power of it. And when I mean body work, I just mean ways to help our nervous systems and bodies release some of the tension, the stress, the trauma that we're holding in ways that are beyond talking, right? So our vagus nerve, which controls our sensory systems, our regulation, all our regulatory systems, digestion, breathing rate, heart rate, only 20% of those nerve bundles carry messages from our head to our body, but 80% carry messages the other way, right? So when we're thinking, I just need to get up and try better tomorrow, right? That's like a head to body thing. Like I'm going to feel less stressed tomorrow and I'm going to respond to my child differently than the way I reacted. I'm trying to convince my body, my nervous system to do something differently. It's not really the most effective way, right? Like, because the body is what really responds first and then our narrative follows. So I talk like ad nauseum about we can't just be in talk therapy. We can't just be doing coaching. Or if you're trying those things and you feel like you're stuck, that there are other options. So that's the first thing. And then, finding a practitioner, getting into that is a little bit of a bigger lift. So tiny thing that folks who are listening can do today. We call it points of joy. It's in our book called Reclaim Compassion, which is all about parent burnout, which we call blocked care, is points of joy. So you just get a list and you start writing down as many things that you can think of that bring you joy. And they can be big things, but we encourage there to be a lot of little things. So it could be things like, your hands around a warm coffee mug. Like we happen to be recording this in the winter. The smell of a freshly brewed cup of coffee, the smell of peeling an orange, the sunshine on your face. Trisha, you live with a fantastic view, right, of some of God's greatest creation, right? Like stepping outside and just like taking in the view. Like these are not big things. They could be your favorite song in the car or whatever it is. But then it's the intentionality of trying to check off, noticing or intentionally adding at least 7 of those points of joy a day. And that gets you to about 50 a week. And we have done this with thousands of parents, and people continue to come back and say, like, this little thing changed my life because it helped my nervous system tell the story a little differently. Instead of saying, my life's terrible, I can't control, my kids are going to end up in jail. There's no hope. There's nothing I can control. I can't control my kids. The school calls every day. We can start saying, oh, like there are hard things, and look at all these places where I still have a little bit of control in my life, where I can still notice joy, where I can affect change in a certain way. And that's a really important message to send to the nervous system.
Yeah, I hear you saying we can act our way into right thinking. We can take that action with our body and make choices. And I'm curious, are you willing to share with us kind of what was that moment that you had where you were just like, I have got to redefine success? Like this definition I have today where my kids got to behave, my kids got to be on this track, that track. What was that moment like for you?
I think the most I've struggled around success, we had to place one of our older kids out of our house to keep everyone safe and to get her the level of care that she needed. And, as someone who leads parents in this space, we were one of the first empowered to connect parent trainers. I mean, all of these things, like that felt like the ultimate failure. We can redefine success in a lot of ways. And there were still some like lingering things that we couldn't control. Like success is being able to keep everyone safe in our home, like to be able to not even do it on our own, right? We had lots of resources. But that kind of felt like, especially as an adoptee, like the ultimate failure. And I've been able to reframe that a little bit, like from a medical perspective, if that child had cancer and needed to go inpatient for, 3 weeks of chemo, no one would have blinked about that. Right. And so I really had to reframe it as like, we are doing what they need to get the resources that are necessary. But there's something about, having to move a kid out for mental health reasons that feels very, very different than physical things. And so that has really been a big piece of like, was that a failure? And fortunately, we're 10 years out from that and have been able to redeem a lot of that relationship and even have them look back and be like, okay, like I get why that was necessary. And so there's been a lot of grace and a lot of mercy there, but that's still a hard story to tell in a lot of spaces, and especially in adoptee spaces where I sit as an adoptee, sitting with adoptees who are estranged from their families for a variety of reasons, right? And then I have this story of like, we have our adoptees were estranged from us for multiple reasons. All three of our older kids have had really we've all had tough parts of our stories. And honestly, like a lot of that was me with my own undealt with junk that like I contribute, like I was an equal, if not greater contributor to how those relationships fell apart in the ways that they did before they could be reconnected.
Number one, I appreciate you being vulnerable and honest and transparent with us. So many of us in this space, we've dealt with that. We've had kiddos go into out-of-home care, but thank you for taking some of the shame off of that because it is just something that's really difficult. I've dealt with a kiddo having inpatient, and so really can appreciate what you're saying, that it feels like the ultimate failure as a parent when I can't keep my kids safe in my own home. And as someone who came up through foster care myself, the idea that my kiddo would limp because of my trauma is a very hard reality to face, and a painful thing. If Melissa Corkum could just write the book on the narrative, like here is what successful parenting is, like at the top of your journal in the morning on any given Monday, Can you finish that sentence for me? Where are you at today? What does successful parenting mean to you today?
I think it has a lot to do with what's the state of my nervous system? What am I doing to care for it? And then what am I doing from that place to offer connection to each of my kids without expectation? And that's the tricky part, right? Like we're recording this in December, right after Thanksgiving. We just had a Thanksgiving where our youngest decided to spend Thanksgiving with a family, with a friend, not with family. And like the whole family had some feelings about that. And I had to think like, what would I tell someone I was working with? Like, I do this every day for a living. It was like, okay, like it's okay for me to feel disappointed about that. That's like all the feelings are valid. But also two, it's not his responsibility to be in charge of my feelings of disappointment. So it's really hard. I feel like we did not learn these skills growing up. I don't know what we were learning in health class in middle school. I'm sure it was about like deodorant and body odor and things that are, important, but like, gosh, what a gift if we had someone say like, this is how to have a feeling and not make someone else responsible for it, right? So I had to be really careful about like not being like, gosh, we're really disappointed you didn't come home, right? Like, because even though I felt like that had energy of like, you should have come home so we wouldn't have been disappointed, which is not, right? Like in my head, I've done enough therapy to know that that's not the way I want to be anymore. And old behavior patterns are really hard, right? So it was kind of like we really missed you. I hope you had a good time. Like, and even sometimes like actually saying, man, I was disappointed I didn't get to see you, but I want you to know that's not on you. Like, I'm going to deal with my own disappointment this week on my own, And it's just so foreign. And maybe some other families like grew up with all of those skills, but ours didn't. So now we're learning. And so that's what success has been, is like, what can I do to offer my relationship as a parent, and still be okay, however that goes. And sometimes it's really fun and we connect and I take my grandkids out for a fun day. And sometimes it's like, yeah, no, I got plans, or I'm not interested, or, whatever that is.
Yeah, I really, really like your definition there, and that idea that I'm responsible for my own feelings, and I don't get to put guilt on you with the way that I word it, even the words themselves, but the actual feeling behind them. You're reminding me, I got a book on my nightstand that's called "You Can't Make Me Angry," and it's that same idea that I am responsible for my own feelings, and that's not on you. So much today. You've shared with us so much vulnerability, really helped us to redefine success, and shared some resources. If our audience wants to learn more about you, where can they find your website?
risetoregulation.com, all spelled out, the word to spelled out. If you look for my name on Instagram, that's where I show up the most on social media and post a lot about, just little tips and tricks for, how we care for our nervous systems, and just posts that help people know that they're not alone, right? That can hopefully put words to some things that maybe they're thinking and feeling, but haven't been able to verbalize or are afraid to say out loud because of that shame.
Melissa Corkum, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Trisha.